Welcome back as we finish up Chapter 8. We've talked about various kinds of loans. We talked about car loans. We've talked about leasing cars. We've talked about all kinds of things, especially that savings part. Now we're going to talk about something that can suck the life out of you, and that's credit cards. So our objectives, and I need to check. Okay, just making sure the pen's working. We're going to take a look at how credit card loans are calculated, how the interest is calculated, the balances, the minimum monthly payment, and so on. Pros and cons of credit cards, because they're not all cons, they're not all bad. There are advantages to them. What's the difference between a credit card and a debit card? What is in a credit report? And how about those credit scores? Are they good measures of credit worthiness? Let's see what all this has to say for us. First of all, the credit card is an example of an open-end installment loan. In other words, we're not taking out a loan and sticking with it and finishing it up. It's called a revolving credit. That means it's like an installment loan. There's my pen. It's like an installment loan, but it's not fixed. Car loans, home mortgages, those are fixed. But there's no schedule for this kind. Credit card loans mean you only have to make a minimum monthly payment. It's not a fixed month. And it depends on the unpaid balance, not a fixed amount. And it depends on the interest rate, which sometimes can change. Now, most of the times, and if you want to, you can just pause this and read the whole thing. I would suggest that. I'm going to just hit some of the highlights to make sure you get some of those parts and don't miss some of the easy parts. So, at the end of every month, you get an itemized billing. So, for example, you might have May 5th through June 4th is a billing period. That includes the unpaid balance. What did you owe on the first day of the billing period? And there are things that you get during that billing period. There are things you pay off. And all that works into how much you're going to owe when the next billing period starts. Because you've got additions, you've got subtractions, you've got interest. All of that has to be considered, as well as how long do each of those intermediate balances really last? Does a certain balance last for 7 days, 3 days, 2 days, 15 days? That makes a difference as to what interest you're going to pay on that particular part. You'll see what I'm talking about, I hope, as we go along. We're talking about simple interest. Remember, interest equals PRT. Maybe you want to use a small I, that's up to you. Or is the monthly rate, though, that's the difference. That is a difference. One reason, I may be jaundiced on this, but I think the reason they show the monthly rate is they don't really want you to see what the yearly rate is, because it can be rather scary. So since it's a monthly rate, T in this case is in months. The principal, oops, I made a mistake, I didn't. It's PAL. The principal is the average daily balance. And if you're not careful, you're going to get confused on this, but we're going to go through a little bit of a list, and you can go through that procedure. The average daily balance is the sum of the unpaid balances for each day in the billing period divided by how many days are in the billing period. That sounds a little bit confusing, doesn't it? Well, this is how you calculate the average daily balance. You get the unpaid balances for each day in the billing period. So each day in that billing period, some 30 days, some 31 days. Each day has a certain unpaid balance when you start the day. When you put all those together, add them together, sum, you divide by how many days are in the billing period, and that gives you average daily balance. So let's take a look at an example. First of all, the monthly interest rate is 1.3%. If you multiply that by 12, you get an average, you get an idea of what the yearly rate is. I'll let you figure that out. I don't want to scare you right off the bat. So for this particular person, the balance at the beginning of the period is $1,350. And that's at the billing date. Now, 7 days later, you send them $250. That's your payment. That means this $1,350 is dropped by $250. So that's good for a couple of days until you charge some airline tickets. Those are $375, so your balance goes up by $375. It stays at that line, at that level, until May 20th, and you buy something again, this time some books for $57.50. So your balance goes up a little bit further. 8 days later, you go to a restaurant, and then your balance goes up by another $65.30. And finally, on May 31st, you end the billing period. And the next payment is due June 9th. But the end of the billing period is when the average daily balance calculation comes to a close. Now notice, whatever balance you had on May 28th, that'll be good for another 3 days until the end of the billing period. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the average daily balance for the billing period. Now this is probably the trickiest part, but if you pay attention and follow the example, you're going to be in good shape. It's sort of like an amortization chart as far as difficulty is concerned. Once you get rolling, you get the feel for it, because some things make the balance go up, some things make it go down. We're going to find the interest that you're going to pay at the beginning of the next billing date, or of course round it to the nearest cent. We don't care about tenths or hundredths of a cent. You're going to find the balance due on June 1st. A little bit of details. We've got a $10 minimum monthly payment, as long as it's less than $360. If it's not under $360, then you multiply your average daily balance by 1/36, and that is your minimum payment. You'll have to think about that. So it's $10 up to $360, and then the minimum is 1/36 if it's a lot more than that. Okay, average daily balance. How do we calculate that? Well, a little table would be a big help on this one. First of all, we're starting out May 1st, we owe $13.50. We made a payment on May 8th, that dropped the balance. Now that means that for 7 days, this was your balance. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to take 7 times that $13.50, because there's 7 days at $13.50. We could just add $13.50 7 times, but this is a shortcut, right? Now, that's May 8th. With that payment, you're down to $1,100 that you owe. That's the balance. But 2 days later, this only lasts for 2 days, and then you have a charge for those airline tickets, so the amount goes up. So for 2 days, your balance is $1,150. So we'll have 2 times 11 100. And you're going to keep these multiplied together, and you're going to add them together at the end. Next, 10 days later, you buy those books. Well, that drives your balance up, but during those 10 days, your balance was $14.75. So you're going to have 10 times $14.75. And then it goes 8 days. And for those 8 days, this is your balance, with the books and airline tickets and everything thrown together and the payment taken out. So next, you multiply 8 times the 1532.50, and you'll get that product. And then you go on to June 1st. You got 3 days here, I believe, or does it end on the 31st? Anyway, it's back on the previous list. You can look. So what do you have? Okay, so you've got these charges. This was another charge that added to your balance, and that's going to be good for 3 days. So 3 days times this 1597.80, and you got another total. Add all these up, and you've got almost the average, except these are, we'll call them, because we're multiplying days times dollars, this sounds a little bit crazy. Dollar days, or day dollars, whatever you want to call it. Then you want to divide by how many number of days you had in that billing period. And that will give you your average daily balance. That's what you're going to use to multiply times that rate to get how much interest you're going to have accrued during that month. So here you go. Actually, it was 4 days. My apologies, because you went from May 28th to June 1st. 4 days. So here are your balances. You had this balance for that long, this balance for that long. Oops, sorry. This balance for 7 days, this balance for 2 days, this balance for 10, this balance for 8, this balance for 4. And if you add these up, you should get the 31 days. And if you're keeping track in this unpaid balance category and keeping track of the number of days here, then it's easy to multiply those together, add that grand total up, which includes the number of days, then you divide by the number of days to get your average daily balance. And your average daily balance, $14.53.26. That's what we're going to use to calculate the interest. And this is the monthly interest, so we multiply that times our average daily balance. And this represents 1 month. And there's our interest for that month of May, roughly. So, on May 31st, you'll owe the amount that you had as your balance at the end of that period, plus the interest. That's the interest, and that's your new balance. And because that's over 360, you don't have the choice of just paying $10. You have to take 1/36 of that amount, and that becomes your minimum. In this case, $45. That is how it's calculated. So here's a list of steps if you want to follow that. Frankly, I would go back and make a table similar to this, or like this, or both. So make a table, beginning date, all the information you need, the transaction dates, the unpaid balance for each date, add a column that shows the number of days and the unpaid balance for each of those rows. And then add a final column that shows, final column at the end here. We've got the rest of the table here. The final column will be the outstanding balance. We'll just call that balance, the balance at that particular time. Add the sum of the products in the final column and divide that by the number of days in the billing period, and that's your average daily balance. You're going to divide that by the number of days in your billing period. Now, as I said, credit cards aren't all bad. There are advantages. One, you get to use the product before you actually pay for it. No interest charges if you pay at the end of each billing period. If you do that, you'd never have any interest charges at all. In other words, you're just delaying paying for those items, and the credit card company says that's okay as long as you pay as you go. If you do that responsibly, you get a good credit score. And if you want to learn more about credit scores, check out page 568 in the book, or thereabouts. You can find it. You don't have to carry around a big chunk of cash. Suppose you're buying a computer, and suppose the computer is, let's just say, $960. You don't have to carry around that in your pocket. You can use the credit card. That's much more convenient. You don't even have to carry around the checkbook. That's convenient too. Also, the credit card company has consumer protections. If someone grabs your credit card, you can stop it, and the credit card company will cover you. And last of all, it's a good source of temporary emergency funds. What if you have to go to the pharmacy and get some medicine that you didn't expect? You can use the credit card. What else? Well, if there's shopping opportunities, if you see a great deal, especially on the phone or on the internet, you can buy that and take care of that without having cash. You can't pay cash over the internet too easily, can you? You can do things like renting a car or booking a hotel room very easily, if not impossible, without a credit card. Monthly statements help you keep track of your spending if you're responsible. Some credit issuers provide an annual statement that helps in tax preparation. If you're not taking the standard deduction, that can be a big help. Some give you free miles toward air travel. And sometimes you can use it as identification. On the other side, the interest rates are high on the unpaid balances. And that's what you're paying the interest on, unpaid balances. In 2009, not that long ago, interest rates were as high as 300%. That's annual. There's no cap on the interest rates, apparently. And you can read the rest of this if you're really interested about the Credit Card Act. There's no cap on the fees. They can go up quite a bit. You can, again, read this if you're interested. What are some other things? Okay, it's easy to just keep using the credit card without considering whether you can pay for what you just bought. It can get you in big financial trouble if you're not careful. There's a minimum payment trap. You think, oh, I only have to pay $10. But in the meantime, your balance is getting higher and higher and higher, even when you only have a minimum payment each month, up to a certain point, right? Now, how about the debit cards? We've been talking about credit cards. There's a convenience of making purchases with a piece of plastic. You don't have to run up credit card debt. You can't spend money you don't have. It's a bit like having can't think of the word right now. You're only spending money that's in your checking or savings account. So you're not running up a bill. You're only using money that you already have. There are drawbacks. There's no protection like the credit card does. You can easily overdraft because it's going toward the money that's in your bank or supposed to be there. And sometimes those overdrafts will cost you as much as $27 per overdraft. You should treat the debit card purchases like you would using a check. It's like a checkbook, only with plastic. And that's my take on it. And you can check your balance at the ATM or online. That's quite handy. Now, how about the credit reports and credit scores? Well, you can find out what your credit score is by using these pieces of information, and you can get a record of all that. Some of this goes on your public record, like bankruptcy information and so on. Collection agencies are going to look at that. Inquiries, sometimes companies ask for your credit information so they can find out what kind of person they're dealing with. Credit bureaus collect credit information, and you can get a credit report by using this URL. I haven't tried it, but according to your book, this is a good one to check, so you might give that a shot. Last of all, credit bureaus use the data from your credit report to create a credit score. And those credit scores range from 300 to 850. The higher the score, the better the credit you've got. Here's some ideas of what those numbers represent. If you've got one up here, you're very good or excellent when it comes to credit. You're going to get the best interest rate on loans if this is your credit score. And you can read the rest. I'm not going to go over something that you can read for yourself. Well, that's it, folks. I hope you are very responsible credit card and debit card users. And that's a wrap for Chapter 8. Bring your questions to class. And of course, if you go back and look at that home ownership one again, be ready to do an amortization report, or not, amortization table. I'm going to have that as a homework grade because it takes a while to work on that. A lot of arithmetic, it's simple once you get rolling, but it does take time. Okay, keep smiling and take it easy, folks. Bye-bye.